So I thought this morning we would go back to Babylon and we would hear Daniel chapter 5, Vox Day, told by storyteller Will Nestle. Daniel chapter 5.
You know my lack of education hasn't hurt me none, 'cause I can read the writing on the wall. What an interesting phrase, I can read the writing on the wall. We all know what it means. It's the same as I can see the signs, or I know which way the wind is blowing. It means that something bad is happening, or is about to happen. But where does it come from? It's a direct biblical reference from Daniel 5. Now, as we know, the Israelites have been taken captive by the Babylonians, and up to this point, Daniel has made a name for himself interpreting the dreams of King Nebuchadnezzar. Well, King Nebuchadnezzar has died at this point, and his son Belshazzar has replaced him as king. Now Shaz, as I like to call him, decides to have a party, and he wants to make it the blowout of the century. So he invites 1,000 of his closest friends to hire a band, and he decides, you know what, let's use the good china. By good china, I mean the gold and the silver articles that had been taken along with the Israelites into captivity. Now these articles were for use in the temple only. These were God's cups and plates. And lest you think that God is unfair to Shaz later on in the story, the king was well aware of what these were for, and he used them for a specific purpose. Basically to say, you know what, if there is a God, I'm pretty much him. So the party gets underway, the band is playing, people are crumping. Really, it's in the Message Bible, and people were crumping. By the way, if you're over 30, crumping is a style of dance. And if you want, feel free to ask anybody under 30, they'd be glad to demonstrate it for you. But in the middle of the party, out of nowhere, a gigantic, disembodied hand in 3D appears and begins scratching words in the plaster of the wall. This hand writes 4 distinct words and disappears. Now, I don't care how good your party is, it cannot survive something like that. And the king is terrified. In fact, if you go back to the original King James, it reads, "And verily, indeed, Belshazzar had the crapeth scared out of him." So he decides this is not happening, and he calls the wise men, magicians, and astrologers, and says, when they get there, he says, tell me what those words mean, or else. Now, if you've been paying attention, in Daniel 2, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream and called the wise men, magicians, and astrologers, and they had nothing. In Daniel 4, he has a dream and calls the wise men, magicians, and astrologers, and again, there's nothing. Now, Belshazzar tells his wise men, magicians, and astrologers to read the words on the wall, and they can't. Apparently, there was no screening process to become a wise man, magician, or astrologer. Anybody could get that job. So now, he's still scared, and now he's getting angry, and he starts talking about reducing people's houses to rubble, when the Queen Mother remembers, who is that guy that used to interpret Nebuchadnezzar's dreams? I bet he could work with writing on the wall. They're almost the same thing. And one of the advisors says, Daniel, his name is Daniel. We're in a bowling league together. I can go get him. So Belshazzar says, good, go get him, and I won't have you killed. So Daniel comes before the king. And Daniel says, oh, king, live forever. And Shaz says, not likely with the week I'm having. You see these words on the wall? Tell me what they mean. Daniel looks at the wall, and he looks back at Shaz. He says, well, I've got good news and I've got bad news. The good news is you have come to the right guy. I can tell you exactly what those words mean. Shaz says, great, what's the bad news? Daniel says, sit down. 4 distinct words, mene, mene, tekel, parsin. Daniel says, mene means, these, by the way, are direct from God. So you've got his attention. Mene means the days of your kingdom are numbered and are coming to an end. And in case you missed that, God repeats himself. The days of your kingdom are numbered and are coming to an end. And tekel means you have been weighed in the balance and found wanting. Which, frankly, is a phrase that has always scared the crap out of me. Daniel goes on, you knew what you were doing. You watched your dad run around on his hands and knees for 7 years eating grass. History's first vegan. Because he tried to set himself up as God, and God was not having any. Well, guess what? God is still not having any. You knew what you were doing. And congratulations, the party is over. Shaz says, I'm not going to like the 4th word, am I? Daniel says, no, you are not. Parsin is pretty simple. The check is due. Tonight, the kingdom is going to be taken from you and divided among the Medes and the Persians. Congratulations, I hope it was a good party because it's going to be your last. Interesting historical note, apparently it was not commonplace in those days to kill the messenger Because the Bible records that after this horrible news, Belshazzar put a robe over Daniel's shoulders, put a chain around his neck, and had him proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. Which was perhaps an empty gesture, because that very night, as God had warned, the Medes and the Persians swept in. Belshazzar was removed from office, and if you read between the lines, I think his head was removed from the rest of him. But now you know where that phrase comes from, the writing on the wall. It was a divine report card that God handed down to the king of Babylon. And if God should so choose to write on any of our walls today, let us hope that we get a better grade than Shas did. And let us also hope that he has nothing whatsoever to say about Medes and or Persians.